Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Lions send David Montgomery to the Texans
for a 4th-round pick, a 7th-round pick, and 26-year-old offensive lineman Juice Scruggs.
Arizona beats Iowa State in a top 10 matchup.
At the end, an easy win over Iowa State.
And Caleb Downs gets concerning injury news ahead of the NFL draft.
Caleb Downs was flagged with a partially torn meniscus this week.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Lions made a trade Monday, sending David Montgomery to the Texans for Juice Scruggs and draft picks. Locked On Lions host Matt Derry breaks down the deal.
The Detroit Lions trade David Montgomery to the Houston Texans for a 4th-round pick, a 7th-round pick, and 26-year-old offensive lineman Juice Scruggs. All of that haul for a 29-year-old running back. Now, first and foremost, I love David Montgomery. I wanted David Montgomery to stay. If you listen to this podcast, if you watch Locked On Lions the last few weeks, we've been doing the show for 10 years. What do I always bring you here on Locked On Lions? Opinions, facts, fun, great guests. We'll have Jeff Risdon, formerly of the Lions Wire, now at Detroit Lions Podcast, tomorrow to talk all things Combine. But one thing I've been very adamant about for the last few weeks is that you've got good players on your team. You want to keep those good players here. But David Montgomery did not want to be here. All right, let's get that out there. David Montgomery said all the right things. David Montgomery did all the right things. His Instagram post today talking about how much he loved Detroit, how he grew up here, Lions will be in his blood for the rest of all these cool things. It pulls at heartstrings. It does, because the Lions have been getting good for the last 4 years, and he's been a big part of it. And he signed an extension when he didn't have to a few years ago. He wanted to stay. And he put on his best smiley face and his best attitude. And he went to Radio Row at the Super Bowl and said all nice things about the Lions. But let's be honest here. He didn't want to be here anymore. He just didn't. He and some of that, I'm not going to blame it on him. I think he handled it well to just have the right tone and say all the right things. And he did talk to Drew Petzing, but it was a roller coaster the last few months for him. First of all, he put out some cryptic Instagram posts during the season when he wasn't getting the rock. All right. Now, he never complained publicly, never said Jahmyr Gibbs should be on the bench and I should be on the field. Never said that. And he and Jahmyr have an unbelievable relationship. And you saw his broken-hearted tweet today, and you saw Amon-Ra St. Brown put stuff up. David Montgomery was a beast. But he wanted to play. He wants time. And you're not going to get time when you've got arguably the best running back in football as their number one guy. Brad Holmes at the Combine was on with Tom Pelissero from NFL Network, or maybe it was the Rich Eisen interview, and was like, Jahmyr Gibbs he's the key to our offense. He's what makes us go. So if that's the case and Montgomery wants to go somewhere, probably somewhere good, and he's going somewhere good in Houston, it's a good team. Texans seemingly win that AFC South every year. They need a running back. Joe Mixon sat out all last year. They had Woody Marks. But the Texans sent a pretty good haul for the Lions. This was a trade for both teams. This was a good trade for Houston and Detroit. Texans need a leader. Texans need a running back bell cow, a horse, and that's what Montgomery is. And the Lions get back 2 draft picks and a guy in Scruggs that might be able to play and help. He's not the starting center. For these people that are writing, and I'm not going to name names, oh, yeah, the Lions got a starting center candidate, and Juice Scruggs. If Juice Scruggs were any good, he'd be the Texans starting center. Their O-line is dog crap. But a depth piece who's been a bust since he came out of Penn State, was probably drafted too high in the second round, He hasn't played well. Look at his PFF grades. They're not good. All right. His best year was 2 years ago when he played center mostly, but he's not been very good. But we're not just handing him the starting job because he was in the David Montgomery trade. He'll be a depth piece and a rotational piece at guard and center. No one's handing him the job, but he's in the last year of his contract, and the Lions are taking a flyer on him. And, oh, by the way, they saved $4 million in cap space by trading a running back who's 29 years old, who's owed, what, $15, $16 million the next 2 years, including, I think, $9 million next year. I don't like it because I love David Montgomery and I'm a fan, but I understand it completely. I get what Brad Holmes is doing. And Brad Holmes twice, right after the season and at the combine last week, said, we like David, but Brad didn't want to say it. But it's obvious that the agent and Monty said, look, can you send me somewhere where I can play? And don't send me to the Jets or the Browns, please. It sounds like these two sides worked it out. Montgomery, puts out an unbelievable Instagram post about how much he loved it here and what Detroit meant to him and what it was to, and I love that stuff. All right. I'm sentimental. Lions have been climbing now for the last 3-4 years. They've had really good seasons. This past year was 9-8 and sucked for all of us. Right? It just did. But from 9 wins to 12 wins to 15, David Montgomery was a big part of it. But I'm sorry, if he didn't want to be here, he's got to go. And there are going to be plenty of running backs out there. And oh, by the way, first one on the list is Sione Vaki. Brad Holmes, you drafted him in the 4th round and traded up to get him at 132. We got to see what he can do now. And I know there's going to be people say, yeah, but he's a converted safety, and that was in college. He has been on the Lions for 2 years. We have not seen much in terms of can he carry the rock in a football game. Because Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get dinged up. That's just how it works. And he's going to have to go to the sideline. There's going to be somebody else standing behind or next to Jared Goff. So, hey, Vaki town, let's see it. One of those mid-round Brad Holmes trade-up picks. Let's see if one of them can pan out. Because we know plenty of others, Hendon Hooker, Broderick Martin, Giomanu, have been clunkers. Vaki is an excellent special teamer, a guy that picks up the offense. And if you watch him in the preseason, and I did, picks up blitzes. He can really block. Now he's going to get an opportunity. But there are other options, which we will discuss coming up. But to see Montgomery go just sucks because he was a part of something cool here. This reminds me of when Jamal Williams was let go. Everybody went, you can't get rid of Jamal Williams. He cried on TV. He cried in Green Bay. That's our guy. And the Lions went, we're going to let Jamal Williams walk and go get David Montgomery instead and spend about the same amount of money. And that's what they did. And it was a shrewd move by Brad Holmes. It was a great move. But this is business. All right. I'm a fan just like you guys. I don't want to see David Montgomery go, but it's pretty obvious. Although he didn't say it publicly, he wanted to play. And I got news for you. And I'm going to say one more thing. What an effing disaster John Morton was as offensive coordinator. What a disservice he did to this team and to this offense and to David Montgomery this season. What a disaster. And look, you're going to have bad moves. It's going to happen. I remember when the Eagles had the 2 bad coordinators the one year and fired them both, including Matt Patricia, and said, we got to wash our hands of this. God, John Morton killed this offense at times. Not all the time. Lions still have a good offense, still have good players. But man, Montgomery was rolling playing with Gibbs. And I get it. Gibbs has gotten better every year. So it's going to be difficult to keep them both appeased. But the John Morton era and the 8 or 9 weeks that he called plays, holy hell. Because David Montgomery was pissed. And even after Morton wasn't the OC or wasn't the play caller, it didn't get any better this year.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. Arizona and Iowa State played in another top 10 matchup in the Big 12, with the Wildcats taking a 16-point win at the end. Locked On Wildcats host Leif Doolan goes over how Arizona made it look so easy in the win.
Arizona, at the end, an easy win over Iowa State, but in the first half it was far from easy. Arizona overwhelmed Iowa State with their depth, with their tenacity, and with their defense. Those were the storylines of this one. Arizona able to physically overwhelm what is a very physical team. Early in the game, Iowa State was getting tons of chances, but they started 3 of 17. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. Arizona able to defend at every juncture with multiple bodies. Like, you look at this team and you watch them play Iowa State and you think, okay, the guys to take away are Milan Momcilovic. And then you look at the box score, and Milan Momcilovic, the best shooter in the country, ended up shooting the ball 8 times and scoring 5 points. This is a guy who scores 17 per game and shoots 51% from 3 and is uber prolific. Then a guy who very well could be the Big 12 Player of the Year due to JT Toppin's injury, Joshua Jefferson, scores 12 points on 2 of 17 shooting. And he scores 8 of his 12 points from the free throw line. Had 4 turnovers. Koa Pete guarded him, and you saw Karchenkov and Bradley assume most of the responsibility of guarding Milan Momcilovic. Those were big keys to the game. We talked about that in the prior episode. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll give my takeaways now, but those are too big to not mention. But the defense stands out. Arizona wins by 16. And you hold a team in Iowa State that scores over 80 per game, and they shoot a ton of threes, and they've got a decent bit of variance because of that. You hold them to 57 points. And the other part of this is, I wouldn't say Arizona played overly well offensively against a very good defensive team, number 8 in the nation. And Arizona finished 46% from the field. Like, they're pretty undeniable in the sense that they'll end up near 50% or better from the field. And this took a poor Karchenkov game, 0 baskets. Pete missed a couple bunnies, 2 of 6. Bradley shot 40%. He was very good, but most of his offense came from the free throw line. But the point is, they come in waves, and when they're whole, speaking of Arizona, they've overwhelmed teams with physicality down low. And Krivas was great in this one. He handled the double teams well, but Tobe is allowed to be what Tobe is great at, and that's being a hammer, a guy who comes with energy, and you just cannot contain him. When he's playing 35 minutes, some of his energy and his physicality ends up being difficult to play that way the whole time. And by the way, we got a comment. I was about to bring this up moments ago. It says, I want a Big 12 champ shirt. Well, I'll get one. I made a promise. And I don't know if that was about me or if you actually want one, but I made a promise when Arizona wins the Big 12. And I said when. I didn't say if back then. I said when Arizona wins the Big 12, I'll get a Big 12 champ shirt. So I will do so. I also made the promise of Final Four national champs, Big 12 tournament champs, all the above. So I will honor that. I've got the hat on right here, champs for another one. Another takeaway I have, and I'm going to go through my notes on this before getting distracted because I'm sure I'll talk about other questions and bring things up. So my first takeaway was, this is an extremely physical game, but the defense of Koa Pete on Jefferson and just the athletic ability to wall up against a guy who's a mismatch 4, and there's no mismatches for Arizona, and the ability to funnel into Mo Krivas, who makes every shot near the basket difficult, is important. And then they took Momcilovic out of the game. Though Ivan Karchenkov had a tough game. He was a dare shooter early. The doubles of Iowa State were leaving him as the rotational guy to shoot the ball, and he missed. A couple in and outs, a couple tantalizing misses. He took Momcilovic out of the game along with Bradley. And the top blocking defense made the game very, very difficult for Iowa State because they're a dynamic scorer. The guy who really busts open a defense, it was not able to play. Like Momcilovic was out of the equation. It was 4-on-4. And I don't know how many of you guys listened to a show I did just an hour. I think I posted it like 6:05 and the game was at 7. So I don't expect tons of you guys to listen to this. But I talked about, because I expect Momcilovic not to get many shots, that Jamarian Bateman would have to be fantastic to have a chance for Iowa State. I wish I had thought of that sooner, but I was just ruminating about the game. And I thought, okay, Jamarian Bateman's really solid. And I think there's going to be less Killian Toure, despite being great defensively, because Iowa State will struggle to score unless one of Lipsy or Jefferson has 30, and they won't. So it made me believe that they needed 3-point shooting, and if Momcilovic doesn't score 30, which he wouldn't against Arizona, he scored 5, it's going to be Jamarian Bateman day. And that was a good thought. He was very good, but let's just look at this statistically, right? Arizona, typically the way to compete with them is you either have to outscore them from 3 or you got to mitigate their advantage on the glass. Well, Iowa State was dominant on the glass early in this one, and yet Arizona wins by 7 on total boards, and Iowa State won the offensive rebounds by 6 because they missed so many shots that they were getting long rebounds, and they were long distance shots. Arizona, though, had more second chance points because their shot defense was unbelievable. They're making it so difficult for Iowa State to score. This is a team that's good offensively. They're 18th in the country. They shot 29% from the field. They shot 23% from 3. Arizona, in points in the paint, didn't get a ton. Iowa State packed it in. They doubled. They made things difficult. Scored 24 points in the paint. But you know what stood out to me? It was that Arizona has relentless pressure on the rim. It was extremely physical, which I think bodes well for Arizona. You know, you can say it's extremely physical if you don't get fouls called and the bigs have their advantage mitigated. That is unfortunate. That happened against Kansas. That happened against Texas Tech a little bit. But extremely physical and continuing to get the pressure at the rim leads to foul pressure. Rim pressure equates to foul pressure, and that paid dividends. And that's what spearheaded the close to the half. It was 22-22, and Arizona closed on a 15-3 run. What was it spearheaded by? Free throws and layups. Those things travel, those things show up all the time. And while Arizona got free throws and layups, Iowa State shot difficult to shoot threes. And this was a game where I don't think Arizona's best players played great. I mean, very early in the game, Braden Burries rolled his ankle. He was not prolific. He lacked his speed. He lacked his burst. 11 points, steady. And I'm worried more about his ankle than I am the poke in the eye. Hopefully he's all right in both. But he played, his game was still a factor. Bradley, 17, controlled the game, got downhill, made his free throws. His free throws looked more confident from even those first 2 than a lot of those ones he was kind of babying. He was guiding rather than shooting. Karchenkov had a bad game offensively, great defensively. Pete missed a couple bunnies, missed a dunk or missed a layup that could have been a dunk on an alley-oop early, missed a couple mid-ranges. Defensively, I would say he was the star of the game. Locked down Jefferson. Put the tenor of the game very difficult because they said, you know what? I don't need any help. And I'm going to lock down single-handedly their best player. You guys take away the dynamic shooter. We'll say no one else help me. Deny passes out to shooters. Jefferson, important number, only 2 assists as well. Played it like a charm. Krivas, great game. Only 4 field goals, 13 points, and he had a great impact even though 3 rebounds. First game in a while, I felt like Awaka has played his role and has been super comfortable in his role, and he had a 10-point, 15-rebound double-double. Arizona doesn't need prolific scoring from anyone. They just need steadiness and health. This team's incredible. They're really, really good. And the other thing is that Arizona took care of the ball pretty well. I'm not going to say great, but you look at what Arizona did is in 15 turnovers, the points off of turnovers led to 16 for Iowa State, but a lot of those weren't necessarily like transition layups. And this was a game where there was so much physicality that there were going to be inherently more turnovers. Would I prefer the number to be under 10? Absolutely. But I don't think turnovers killed them in this game because they got back, and their turnovers for the most part were dead ball turnovers as opposed to live ball turnovers. And Arizona able to win the fast break battle, and this is my point, 17-9, despite losing the turnovers committed by 4. And that stuff really matters in this. Steadiness, defensive excellence, and I just think that that if you have the healthy team, that Arizona will find a way. And this is a team that's still banged up. I mean, Burries was hobbling out there. I think Pete's still getting his legs back, his endurance back. I think Awaka was nursing a sprained ankle recently, looked healthier in this one. I see the interesting part of this is all the stuff that Arizona had struggled with that you guys had mentioned and were appropriately mentioning, I think we're fixable in terms of having the whole team. And another point is like Aristode hit a 3 early. He denied the ball, had a takeaway. He missed that dunk. I really wish he made it. He had a putback dunk. But the point is, that's the 8th guy on this team. He also walled up against Jefferson a few times. And like if your 8th guy can stretch the floor and hit open shots and also can guard Momcilovic and shut him down at times, but also can guard against guards in different times. He defended A.J. DeBonce, he defended Momcilovic, he defended Jefferson, and he does so admirably. Things are going to be good. So a lot of the things that we talked about is like, oh, they double the post. Arizona's gotten better at feeding out of the post. This is an uber aggressive turnover forcing team in Iowa State. Arizona did a good job. I think that Arizona also, when healthy, has more answers to questions. And free throws were a huge factor because the team was whole, so they could play with the force that requires fouling from the other team because Arizona is too big and too strong.
Caleb Downs hopes to dominate at the next level, but the top prospect got flagged with a potentially major injury at the NFL Combine. Locked On Cowboys looks at the situation for Downs and for the teams who might want to take him in the draft.
Let's actually start with the news that came out, the latest, and that's Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, who we've been putting in. I mean, we've been dreaming of him at pick number 12. And it was an article by Corey Kinnan, who was out there, one of the better draft guys. He was told that Caleb Downs was flagged with a partially torn meniscus this week. He also didn't work out. That is not a serious concern, according to Corey. But he was also flagged for a potentially degenerative ACL. What do we do with this information?
Yeah, just real quick, check out Daft on Draft. That's Corey's site that he's part of, so definitely check them out. I mean, it's real mixed news, right? It's like it's obviously not great that he's got these injury concerns and that he's been flagged. I mean, some of it is even the news itself is kind of a mixed bag. I mean, it's he's got this current thing that he'll get over, and then the degenerative ACL talk obviously is a little frightening, right? But it's not currently expected to be miss any time or be injured. I think
as of this podcast recording, that's not what we've heard, right?
That's not what we heard. That is obviously subject to change, but I think in the sense that he's got some injury stuff to deal with, that's not necessarily great news, but in the sense that maybe concerns around his injury news combined with the fact that the safeties had an incredible set of workouts in the combine, maybe it just is enough for some of these teams that are above you to just think twice, right, about pulling the trigger on Caleb Downs and maybe, give a little more deference to some of these guys who that don't have those same kind of injury concerns, or maybe they're looking for an excuse to draft a tackle above Caleb Downs, despite Caleb Downs maybe being a higher rated player on their board. And this is enough to kind of push them over the edge. So I think for the Cowboys' point of view, it certainly increases the chances that the Cowboys could potentially get him at 12. But, obviously there's more downside there now as well.
It's complicated too, because Jerry Jones said he doesn't want project players. And what I thought about that was like guys that were injured, right? And I mean, you could take that as project guys that like need a lot of development. And sometimes it's really hard to decipher what Jerry Jones actually means. But to me, it's like, I don't think he wanted to take any more of like Savon Ravel, Jalen Smith, these guys that have really big talent, but you've got to wait for them. I think he wants guys that can play right now. And again, does the meniscus need surgery? I don't know what a partially torn meniscus is. It's kind of like being pregnant or not being pregnant. You kind of have to be one or the other. Like, do you need to have surgery on it? And if it's a full rebuild, that's a 12-month injury. If it's a trim, that's something that's like a 2 or 3 month injury. I honestly don't know, but I was already starting to wonder, Landon, if Caleb Downs could potentially fall I do all this work with the consensus board and mock drafts. He was already starting to fall before the combine. And I looked at someone last year like Malachi Starks, who went into the combine as the 12th overall player. A week after the combine, he fell to, I think, or he ended up dropping in the consensus board, went 27th overall. Everybody thought Malachi Starks was a top 10 or 12 player in the draft. I wondered now, given the injury news with Downs, if he's somebody that could fall from a top 5 player to the teens.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, again, like it's not even just this news. It's kind of all the other things that were already kind of pushing him near a cliff. Cliff. It's the positional value argument. It's the depth of the position in this draft. The fact that he didn't work out. The fact that
he came in 5. I think the wingspan was 5 inches smaller than Dylan Thieneman, and Thieneman's not a big safety by any means.
No. Yeah, and I think it's just losing a little bit around the edges, right? Like, and it's enough to kind of add up to maybe taking a stock hit. So I certainly think that it's another thing in a long line of just kind of small bad things that are working against Downs, but that even stuff that aren't necessarily inside his control, right? No. But I think that when you add it all up, it just makes it that much more difficult for someone to kind of push themselves into. I know the tape's elite, but he's injured. He's potentially injured. He's playing a position that's not so valuable. I just think it makes it a lot easier with another talking point to kind of talk yourself out of Caleb Downs if you're in the top 5, top 10, and then talk yourself into, maybe this tackle isn't a normal top 10 tackle, but I'll take him here, right? Because I just feel like that's where I feel like the value is. So,
well, and I think having guys like Monroe Freeland and Spencer Fanu, who both had awesome performances, maybe just take it, because an offensive tackle or even a guy that can play tackle and guard is just going to be more valuable than a safety. So my question for you is, again, we're still learning more about Caleb Downs, but knowing what we know now, if he's available at 12, is he still a no-brainer pick for you?
I think so. I mean, I think it depends on who else is there. Like if somehow there's again, we just don't know what's going to happen. If Sonny Styles and him were both there, I probably would go with Styles at this point. It's enough to maybe kind of push him over, especially with what Styles also did. But I think in almost every other scenario, I just think he's too talented to pass up at 12, and I think you're getting such a talented player that.
Well, let's hypothetical that let's say he needs a meniscus surgery and he's out 6 to 7 months. Does that change anything for you?
Yes, of course it does. And I think that's, we're just working on the information we've got. If he does have to have a meniscus surgery, then I think, regardless of what I think, Jerry has basically, as you said that they're not looking to, for a redshirt situation. That sounds like pretty much a redshirt situation. So I think it would change the angles a little bit. I think that's why all the particulars here really matter.
And this is the part that sucks about the NFL Combine. Like yesterday, we did a show talking about all the great players that performed well and why it was a good combine for the Cowboys and why we're excited. This is the real reason why they have the NFL Combine, is for all the medical checkups. And there's going to be more players that trickle out, or more news that trickles out over the next month of guys that are having to go back to Indianapolis for medical rechecks, or guys that have banged up knees and shoulders. They're going to drop their draft value. And this is why it's a marathon and not a sprint. We put together these mock drafts starting in January and February, and you say there's no way that Caleb Downs is going to follow you at 12. And now it's to the point of like, okay, if he's there, do you have to take him? It's part of the draft.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to start asking yourself a bunch of tough questions. And unfortunately, the results of the medical stuff is usually the kind of catalyst for a lot of those really difficult conversations.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Bucks got Giannis Antetokounmpo back in the lineup last night, but still got beat bad by the Celtics. Camille Davis and Frank Madden go over the loss in Giannis's first game back on Locked On Bucks.
Another blowout loss. Another night of just questionable effort from everyone involved on this team to a level. Lost tonight to a Celtics team without Jaylen Brown, without Kata, without Tatum. Lost by 27 points to the Celtics team. 108-81 loss to this Celtics team. This comes on the heels of losing by 23 points yesterday to the Bulls. Comes on the heels of losing by 29 points to the Knicks. So again, the third straight blowout loss for the Bucks. Frank, do you I'm laughing before I even ask the question. Looking at this game tonight, is this a continuation of struggles that we have seen over the last couple of days at this point? Or is it somewhat of a factor of like, hey, is Giannis kind of readjusting to getting back into this lineup here? You know, maybe the team just had to figure things out with him coming back into this grouping, but it's the second straight game in a row where the offense completely stalled. I'll answer before I even throw it to you and say it's both, in my opinion. But what did you see on that front, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we talked about it. I think after the Cavs game last week, right? Like about like, well, what do we take? Like, do we believe in this team a little bit? Like, et cetera. I mean, the unfortunate reality is like even when they won whatever it was 3 or 4 to start after the break, they didn't play defense at all.
Yep.
You know, like the Cavs game, they got crushed on the glass again. It was a lot of the kind of worst habits that we saw in the first half of the season. And they were able to win games because they just couldn't be stopped offensively, and they, you know, shot the piss out of the ball. And, you know, it's like they went to New Orleans and they gave up 82 paint points, like, you know, still won because it's the Pelicans. And this is what happens, you know, like if you don't have an identity and you don't play sustainable basketball, like it's going to catch up with you when you play teams that do play like that. And certainly the Bulls do not play like that. So really no excuse in that one. But yeah, I mean, the last 6 quarters, I mean, we're used to the defense being bad. Like this team has given up on, you know, being good defensively. Like you can just tell guys that you think of as like good defenders. There's not like, and defense is hard, right? Like you can't be great defensively when you've got like 3 guys bought in out of 5 at any given point.
Right.
But like I think have seen like the level of consistent effort drop. But we at least felt like this team would be engaged offensively. And I think that's what stood out really so much over the last 24 hours is, you know, the second half in Chicago, I think they scored 31 points. And in this game, they scored 38 points in the second half, but they only scored 43 in the first half too. So, so I don't have the season stats in front of me ranked, but I mean, this has to be one of the worst offensive performances that we've seen all season. And the funny part was like, I mean, they didn't even shoot that poorly. I think they shot 36% from 3, but inside the arc, they were terrible. This is Giannis's first sub 50% shooting game of the season. And, you know, he looked like he was getting into a rhythm early in the third quarter. They got it within 9, and then the Celtics went on. I don't even know what it ended up being.
I think it was a 10-0 run right after they
got
it
least
down
10.
to 9.
Yeah, I think it ended up being more than that. But they pretty much just kind of snapped their fingers, and the Bucks just kind of fell down, and you know it was over. So yeah, I mean, this is a poorly coached team that has no identity, and you know, and it's too bad, right? Because there were some decent vibes at least. You know, with Giannis out, expectations were low. You know, they go 8-7, I think it was, without Giannis, which on paper is, you know, a good result, even though it was a super easy schedule with some really advantageous like opponent injury situations, let's say, as well. So Yeah, I mean, now we're just sort of back to Giannis is back, but the vibes are horrible. And, like the guards in particular tonight, like, I
Yeah.
mean, we'll talk about the starting lineup changes, but like, I mean, Ryan Rollins has had good performances off the bench, but he looked completely off kilter coming off the bench tonight in his return to a six-man role. KPJ was pretty anonymous, didn't really seem to know how to get back into a rhythm with Giannis. Cam
Seemed like he was
Thomas, I
questioning
don't know.
himself out there on the floor with the offense too. Were like
Yeah.
passing up shots he normally would take and trying to find Giannis, and then just the communication was off. It didn't feel right for KPJ the entire time out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just a terrible performance. And, that's now 3 straight. So, again, like just bad times rolling downhill now. And yeah, I mean, again, like this team obviously was really nowhere to begin with. And now they're kind of even further into nowhere after these last 3 games. And just to lose them in the fashion that they did too, right? Not even competitive. I think just sort of tells you like again that this team again there's no foundation that they have to build off of. And again there is obviously some talent, especially some offensive talent, but
Mhm.
even with Giannis back tonight, like clearly they just don't really know what they want to be.
Yeah, the lack of identity is glaring. And when you're talking about a lack of identity at the beginning of March, where it's like by this point in the season, teams should really know who they are, know what their identity is, understand what their role is. And yes, injuries have definitely played a role in the Bucs season so far. I think it's very fair to acknowledge that. But I think it's also very fair to say like these guys just seem completely lost out there in regards of what it is that they're supposed to be doing, which again points to coaching. This game was disappointing on another level too, because it's like, yes, it's a back-to-back for the Bucks here, but also a back-to-back for the Celtics. Like, and the Celtics had a rest disadvantage because they played in Boston at 7 p.m. Central Time, I believe it was, finished their game, flew in, got into Milwaukee at like 2 in the morning. Meanwhile, the Bucks had a matinee game in Chicago that was a bus ride away, and still the Celtics came out with more energy. Like, to see 19 offensive rebounds for the Celtics in this game, it just, I mean, it just speaks volumes. And Giannis did make his return to the lineup, first game since January 23rd for Giannis. And with his return back to the squad, to the team, to the rotation, the Bucks made some lineup changes. The starting lineup looked different. You saw Ryan Rollins and Kyle Kuzma head to the bench. You saw Ousmane Dieng and Giannis get inserted into that starting lineup. Another lineup surprise. There was no Kyle Kuzma at all tonight. In post game, Doc said Kuz not playing was purely a coaching decision and that they want to try to get as many minutes as they can for Jane going forward. The last part, I have no qualms with, but it was very curious to see like Gary Harris check in during the first quarter. And it's like, oh no, Kyle Kuzma. Okay, that's interesting to see that Pete Nance gets his first minutes in the third quarter. Like, what were your thoughts on the Bucks rotation tonight? And should this be the group of 10, 11 guys that are playing regularly for the squad going forward?
I mean, they're just desperate, right? I mean, I think that's just as simple as that, right? I mean, I think uh, the Jeng decision I think gets at like something that we've talked about a bit, which is
Mhm.
you know, in the year 2026, where positional size has become really important again, where offensive rebounding has become important again, um, can you really kind of make it with a 3 guard lineup as your starting group? Um, and I mean, statistically, that group has fared fared well, and they've actually like the defensive rebounding numbers are good with Porter, Rollins, and AJ, in spite of the fact that like those guys have played with a lot of different groups, especially with
Yeah.
Giannis, in and out um, throughout the season. So it's like kind of worked better than it maybe feels like it should have. Um, but certainly, as you think about like evaluating this team moving forward and kind of fit of guys, right? I think we saw during the last time when Giannis came back, I think Rollins in particular kind of struggled to figure out like what his role was. It felt like he was kind of camped in the corner a lot. So I'm sure kind of like part of the thinking here is, AJ as an off ball gravity guy has more value than Ryan just sort of standing in the corner, or, occasionally being a second side attack guy, and instead using him off the bench where you can get him the ball more. I mean, that's, I think, the theoretical idea behind it. I think also in principle, Rollins makes more sense when he's got to share the floor with Cam Thomas, because, Cam's obviously much more of an on-ball guy, and Ryan's better at playing off ball than KPJ, who, since KPJ is such, because he doesn't really catch and shoot threes anymore. But I mean, tonight, like, nothing worked tonight. So, I mean, we'll see kind of what moving forward. I think though, the idea with Jang obviously is like, well, he's the only guy who kind of plays like a 3-and-D wing, who actually is like properly small forward size. Because Kuzma also is that size defensively, but obviously his shooting is not something that teams really respect, even though he has been shooting the ball much better of late. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just desperation, right? It's just saying like, oh, what if we give Jang some extended run? Doc talked about Jang and Giannis getting some chemistry from whatever 4-on-4 type stuff that they did while Giannis was coming back. But I mean, again, like, you saw a few moments, like Jang had a nice kind of deep entry pass to Giannis in the first quarter. But there were other times where it was like, I think Jang was kind of struggling to figure out, like, okay, do I, pass? Do I shoot? How much do I push to try to get Giannis touches and things like that? So, it was an up and down night for him. I think he had 13 points. So certainly not, I mean, he was one of the better Bucks, probably one of the better offensive performances from the Bucks, which obviously were few and far between. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, like, okay, so that didn't work. So then what do you do next game, given this is, game one of Giannis coming back? He's on the minutes restriction. He played 25 minutes tonight. And like I said, I mean, he actually started pretty well. I think he had like 17 points on, maybe it was like 6 of 10, 7 of 11 shooting, something like that, and then finishes 7 of 18. So I mean, he just missed everything, kind of from the early third quarter after he had that kind of brief burst on. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, someone pinged me, Cam Thomas should start, Camille, and the only thing I know for sure is that I do not need Cam Thomas starting. It felt like a kind of his night in a nutshell was when they were getting their doors blown off in this early second quarter, and he was dribbling around and settles for like a long corner contested 2-point shot. And it was just like, yeah, that's sort of this game in a nutshell. So I don't know. And as far as like those third quarter rotations, I mean, they were desperate. So I mean, throwing Pete Nance into the fray, who he had immediately hit a couple threes. I think that's just trying to throw stuff against the wall and see if any of it sticks. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there's I'd love to see them figure out ways to get like Jang and Pete Nance minutes, even if maybe at times like it would maybe be, well, I don't even know. Like, I was gonna say, like, maybe be smarter to play other guys, ahead of them. But it's like, who am I kidding at this point? Like, like what are you gaining with these? Because those guys actually, like, again, especially Jang makes some kind of moves out of youthful indiscretion. But for the most part, like, he's unselfish. I think defensively, he's really competent, switchable. Nance also, like, works really hard and generally is a smart player, makes kind of the right play offensively. So, I mean, whatever. Like, you're not losing games because those guys are playing more. I think at this point, there's lots of other things. And again, tonight, I mean, I start with the guards, and just, we've seen them. Usually you get like 2 out of 3 playing pretty well. And tonight you had 0 for 3. So
yeah,
that's just really kind of tough to overcome. And Gary Harris randomly playing, I don't know, like some of this, I just wonder if it's like a coach giving a veteran guy like some random slot minutes just to, make sure he's still paying attention or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Doc's out of ideas at this point. I mean, I think this coaching staff's been out of ideas for quite some time. And, I think right now they're just in desperation mode.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. Trae Young will play his first game with the Wizards Tuesday, but he got thrown out of Monday's game from the bench as Washington fell to Houston. To go over the altercation and Trae's debut, here's Locked On Wizards.
The Wizards lose tonight to the Rockets, 123-118, the final score, a competitive one, but man, we had literally everything happen tonight. I mean everything.
Ben, definitely the most entertaining game of the year. Kevin Durant getting into it with Bob Carrington, Tariq Eason, Jameer Watkins, Trae Young getting ejected. Laramie Tunsil, Commanders left tackle, literally walked right past under us. A great game, Ben, and it was a competitive one. You love to see only losing by 5 points against a good Western Conference team, Ben.
Yeah, we got a lot to get into today. First of all, Trae Young will debut for the Washington Wizards on Thursday. Then he gets ejected from this game with those aforementioned altercations. We talk about Bilal Coulibaly. He had a season high tonight. We'll talk about him as well. Then maybe we'll give you an opportunity in the final couple minutes here to get some of your comments out. Today, Trae Young essentially broke his own news on his Instagram that he plans to play on Thursday. Now, everyone is looking at the schedule saying, wow, the Wizards, who are they playing? Oh, the Jazz. Oh, the Jazz. That's that happens to be one of those teams doing the T-word thing, the T-word thing. But at the end of the day, Trae Young will play. This is something we expected for a while, and I am fired up about it, AB. I don't really care that he's only going to play 17 to 20 minutes. That's what Brian Keefe said today in his pregame press conference. I am fired up to see what his fit looks like with a lot of these guys offensively.
I mean, Ben, again, this is a way of us showing Adam Silver that we are an ethical organization. We're going to suit up our star and Trae Young on 17 to 20 minutes against another team that's the T-word, the Utah Jazz. I'm excited. And tonight, although it's not the best look to get ejected when you haven't played on wearing a Wizards jersey, but it just goes to show that Trae Young is willing to buy into what they're trying to do here. He's trying to help out his teammates, backing up his teammates, and Tariq Eason pushing Jameer Watkins and then getting into it with the fan. I mean, so many things happened tonight. Maryland Terp, Juju Reese, man, he had the assignment of guarding Elbrin Şengün, which is pretty tough. We'll talk about that as well. But Trae Young coming back, we saw that the notification before the game started. I just love it because, again, this is something that we want to see, glimpses of what we're hoping to see next season. Now, him not being out there with Alex Sarr, a little, not concerning, but I was a little disappointed about that because I wanted to see those two play together at some point during this post-trade deadline. But at the end of the day, Trae Young's coming back. And I'll tell you one thing, Ben, Capital One Arena is going to be a little more packed than usual.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some good energy because two things tonight stuck out to me. One, the two loudest things that happened in this game were Trae Young, when he got ejected, the crowd loved it. They went crazy for it when he headed back to the locker room. And then a fan who made a half-court shot to win $10,000. That's the first time I think that's happened all season, so shout out to that dude. That was incredible. It was lively for that moment. Thursday, it's going to look different. And I tweeted it out. I said it's going to look a lot different in this building next year, period. But hell, Thursday might look like a very pro-Wizards crowd excited to see what Young brings to the table. And I'm excited about it too. And although we're in this situation where you don't want to win too many games, that's not good for what you're trying to do. But if he's out there for 15 to 20 minutes, and one, you know that he's not going to bring you much defensively, the way they manage minutes, the way the Wizards have been doing this whole thing, and considering you don't really have any bigs right now as well, Julian Reese got the start today. We'll talk about him later as well. I think the Wizards will be just fine. And now against the Jazz, I don't know. That might be a lost cause. The Jazz are doing everything possible to lose every single night. The Wizards might win by 30 on Thursday. They really might win by 30, but they have to make sure they lose the next time they play them on the road. Maybe they could have a handshake agreement or something like that. I'm just kidding. But no, this is exciting stuff, man, to see this trade finally materialize and get to see the product on the floor. And a lot of people thought Dawkins and the coaching staff were selling a bill of false goods by saying that we would see him at some point this year. I think this was always the expectation. You want to see what the fit looks like. You want to see him get involved. in that leadership role. All right, well, moving on to him getting ejected from this game, which I thought was electric. It shows that he is bought in because he had Jameer Watkins back. Tari Eason blatantly shoved Jameer Watkins onto the ground on an offensive possession for Houston in this game. Then on the ensuing transition possession, he pushed Watkins again. Those two got into it, and Trae Young stepped onto the court and started letting him hear it. He got involved, and because he stepped onto the court, he was ejected from the game instantly. As he went to the locker room, he pumped up everybody. The crowd got into it, and Trae Young already tweeted something out. He said, "Don't expect me to get ejected too many more times, DC, but I'm definitely bringing that energy and competitiveness when I'm back with my brothers." So he's bought in to this organization. He wants to be a leader. He wants to show that he's all about all things Wizards. That's what I'm talking about the other day with culture, AB. How about them having Jameer Watkins back? I mean, it got chippy in this one.
How legendary is that, Ben? You haven't even stepped foot and wore and played in a game as a Wizard, and you're all going out there showing energy, supporting your brothers. And Jameer Watkins, a young guy who went up to Tari Eason and said, "Hey, I'm not taking it. I know I'm a rookie, but you're not going to act like I'm nothing in this league right now. I'm trying to go out there and prove myself." I love what Trae Young did, and it just goes to show that a veteran presence alongside the young guys that you have, you're just cooking up something here in DC. And next season, it's just going to be so exciting. We're getting closer to the finish line, the end of this season, draft lottery, extension talks. I know there was some report came out from Mark Steinman. I don't know how much credibility is when it comes to his extension. I don't even know how is that possible they have that idea of him talking about it when it's not even towards the end of the season yet. But it is what it is. What Trae Young did tonight, I'm all for it. It was amazing. And again, him on Twitter after the game saying that you're not going to see many of this, it's just hilarious. And I'm excited, Ben, for Thursday. He actually might drop 20 to 30 points against the Jazz on a minute restriction.
It'd be really funny if he did. But no, I hope to see him operate in that pick and roll. You're not going to have Sarr out there, so I wonder how that kind of plays into it. I know you brought that up already, AB, but you actually segued us perfectly because I want to talk about this extension conversation that we saw. So from the Stein line, Mark Stein, a very credible NBA reporter, he's the one that really was first to headline all of this Trae Young stuff to DC initially. He was the first one that really reported that there was mutual interest on both sides and that Young wanted to be in DC. He says he thinks that an extension is very likely for Trae Young, around 2 to 3 years. There was some numbers being thrown around that people were saying that he reported in terms of like the contract being something worth $40 million per year, like 3 years, $120 million. But he's come out and said, "Hey, like that's not part of my reporting. Like I did not report that." And that makes a lot of sense because this is how it works. In the NBA, you're not allowed to negotiate an extension or anything of that sort until July. So once the offseason begins and you have those type of conversations, then you might start to hear some numbers leak out. But this is a tight-run chip organization in terms of what the front office actually leaks out. So if anything, maybe some of this stuff is coming from Trae's camp saying like, yeah, we think we're going to get an extension here in DC. It seems like they're interested in that, and we'll have those conversations down the road. So if you see any numbers out there, I don't know if I'd buy too much into that right now. That's not something you can really even look at, and the team is not going to comment on that right now. If anybody asks about it, they'll say, we're not allowed to negotiate an extension until the summer. They said the same thing about Anthony Davis, so expect the same thing for Trae Young here. But if it is indeed true that they are likely to extend him, I thought it was pretty likely. I think that is a pretty likely thing to happen, so we'll have to see how that all plays out, AB. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I meant to say credibility, I wasn't questioning Mark Stein. I was more talking about the numbers because I saw numbers being thrown out, and I was like, I think it's too soon for that. But I'm excited. I think tonight just goes to show that Trae Young is ready to step on the court. He's tired of wearing different iconic jerseys on the bench and just clapping, making sure that he daps all of his teammates up after a timeout. I think it's a different era here in DC. You're having a guy that can dish the ball at an elite rate, can score the ball at will on all three levels, and defensively, I'm not really concerned because what he gives you offensively, it kind of overshadows what he doesn't offer you defensively, and it's just going to be exciting seeing him play alongside Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, who had a great night today from three-point land as well. We'll get into the game in itself. Like, think about it, man. We're talking about everything that happened. We haven't even gone into the game today, and it was a competitive game against a Rockets team that's trying to make it to the NBA Finals. So today was just amazing. It was great to cover the team, and Trae Young Thursday. Just pack up, making sure. I know some people already bought tickets for the game, but make sure you're here on Thursday if you're a Wizards fan at Capital One Arena because it's going to be electric.
I'm honestly fascinated to see what the crowd looks like, what the energy looks like, because really the only night where I could say there was a true pro Wizards crowd that was really into the game, cheering for them to win, defense chance, was on John Wall celebration night back a little bit over a month ago. I'm really interested, AB. Do you think we see like a big-time pro Wizards crowd here?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be because, again, after acquiring Trae Young and AD and then John Wall night, like you mentioned, I think Trae Young just being active and stepping foot on the court, that's just a star that we haven't had here in so long. And as much as we love John, he's kind of giving you that energy back when it comes to being a point guard of this team. And I just can't wait. The first three-pointer or the first lob to whoever he throws it up to is going to be exciting.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Raiders officially filled out the coaching staff for next season while trade rumors swirl around star Max Crosby. Your boy Q has more on everything going on in Vegas on Locked On Raiders.
So, we found out late on Sunday afternoon that the Raiders are official like a referee's whistle when it comes to the coaching staff. The coaching staff is complete. As a matter of fact, one of the latest coaching hires was done on Friday, and it was right around the time that my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, was wrapping up. It was like, I don't know, it ended at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so it was probably 7:57, and all of a sudden the notice came through that they were hiring another coach. So I got to speak on him really quickly, and then that was it. But now that everything is finalized, everything is in the book, so let's go ahead real quickly and let you know who is on the staff for 2026. And this is official. I doubt that they'll add anyone else at any stage of the game because, again, why would they make this big announcement if they were going to add more coaches? So Clint Kubiak, head coach. Mike McCoy, assistant head coach. Matt Capurro, senior vice president, coaching operations. And then Rohit Mogalavapalia. Yeah, figure that out. Director of special projects and game management. I know I got his name wrong, but he's on the staff as well. I'll get that worked out. Don't you worry. On the offensive side of things, Andrew Janocko, offensive coordinator. Zach Azzani, wide receivers coach. Pete Collins, offensive quality control. Rick Dennison, offensive line. Nick Holtz, he's actually the one that they added on Friday right before my show got wrapped up. Actually been with the Silver and Black for 10 years. Went away for a couple of years and is back. Now he's the offensive passing game coordinator. One name that you won't hear or one position you won't hear, quarterback coach. That's basically what Holtz is going to handle. That's something Mike McCoy is going to handle. That's something Andrew Janocko is going to handle. There is no quarterback coach for the Raiders in 2026. Mario Jebaril, offensive running game coordinator. Connor McQueen, offensive quality control. Luke Steckel, remember he's with the Raiders. He's back as a tight ends coach. Ben Wilkerson, assistant offensive line coach. Omar Young, running backs coach. And Tim Zetz, offensive assistant. So Tim Zetz was another one that was added late into the project. The defensive coaches, Rob Leonard, defensive coordinator. Steve Ferentz, defensive assistant. Drew Gaither, defensive quality control. Cody Grimm, defensive quality control as well. Al Holcomb, senior defensive assistant. Kenyon Jackson, assistant defensive line. Kentner Cup, defensive quality control. Matt Robinson, safeties coach. Travis Smith, defensive line coach. Ronell Williams, linebackers coach. Joe Woods, passing game coordinator and defensive backs. While the special teams, Joe Day Camillus, special team coordinator. Marquise Williams, senior assistant special teams. And Tim McConnell, assistant special teams. So there you go. Another big laundry list of coaches. Again, when you start to look at an NFL coaching staff, you always look at the offensive coordinator, the head coach, obviously, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator. There's about 5-6 coaches. Offensive line coach is a big one as well. Quarterback coach that the Raiders don't have. They had a couple guys that they had in mind for that position. They weren't able to get them. Instead of just going ahead and saying, all right, we're going to force somebody into that position, they decided not to go with that. So not saying that they won't have a quarterback coach next year, but again, between Mike McCoy, who's worked with quarterbacks for quite a long time, Andrew Janocko, who's the offensive coordinator but has worked with quarterbacks for a long time, and also with Nick Holst, offensive pass game coordinator, I think he'll be covered. And, oh, by the way, the head coach, Clint Kubiak, a guy that's really good with the quarterbacks as well. I think that there will be, honestly, no problem. So that's the coaching staff in a nutshell. Signed, sealed, and delivered at some point this week. I'm assuming that we'll end up with a press conference with the Raiders, the head coaching staff, and a couple other coordinators. I'm assuming, but I don't know that for a fact. Also wanted to give you the latest and the greatest when it came to Max Crosby. Obviously, he became a big subject, or he is a big subject because he's a hell of a player, but he's a big subject. He was a big subject at the scouting combine. I know a lot of people are tired of the conversation. I'm tired of the conversation, but it's a conversation. So we got to go ahead and speak on it anyway. So Jeremy Fowler from ESPN put out a piece alongside Dan Graziano on ESPN.com, just basically takeaways from the scouting combine. You can go ahead and check it out there. He said it's somewhat quiet on the Max Crosby front. This is a layered discussion because a team source said a few weeks ago that Crosby's chances of returning were relatively small, but he also does not plan to request a trade. He's tied with Raiders owner Mark Davis, and he probably wouldn't garner a Michael Parsons-like trade, which was 2 firsts and a key player. So with all that being said, it goes back to kind of what I've been saying for a while, that I don't think that Max Crosby will be playing somewhere else in 2026. Are the chances still there? Sure. If the Raiders start off really poorly and get to the trade deadline, could this conversation come up again? Sure. Right? And could some team come through with a big-time offer? Absolutely. All those things are possible. I just don't, at this stage of the game, think it's going to happen. So I think that we will all see Mad Max Crosby as a member of the Raiders in 2026. But again, that's just me. And like I said, I know a lot of people are tired of the conversation. I'm tired of having to update it all the time. Sometimes I try to avoid it just because I don't want to talk about it. But when you're talking about one of the best players in the league, one of those big impact players, you have to bring it up at some stage of the game. Also, in Jeremy Fowler's piece, he was talking about defensive players that multiple teams are interested in, and the Raiders came up in this conversation as well, talking about linebacker Tremaine Edmonds from the Bears. He's still only 27 years old. He had 112 total tackles in 2025, 61 solo, 4 interceptions, and a sack. Apparently, Jeremy Fowler said the Titans, Raiders, and Giants are among teams interested in high-end linebackers, and they like Edmonds, who's only 27. Despite 8 years in the league, he was granted permission to seek a trade earlier this week. So the linebacking class in the draft is very deep, but if the Raiders want a guy, especially with moving to a 3-4, and they obviously are going to need multiple linebackers. They don't have linebackers that are under contract. Only Cody Lindenberg and Tommy Eichenberg are under contract right now. You've got E-Rob, you've got Jamal Adams, and you've also got Devin White. All those guys are free agents, so there's no telling that if they bring them back or not. They may want to pursue a guy like Tremaine Edmonds. But the question is, are they willing to give up good draft capital? I don't know what it would take to land him, but apparently they're in on him. And again, he's a proven veteran, so you might want to add a veteran to that room, especially if you're switching defenses from going from a base 4-3 to now a base 3-4. So just kind of the latest and the greatest coming out of the scouting combine, some news and notes, and obviously the Raiders and their coaching staff now finally complete.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.